Hey guys, I'm Phoebe, and you'll never guess where I lived last year. In a secret cupboard in the girls' bathroom. Yes, really. Last summer my parents split up, and it was awful. I went to live with my dad in his new apartment. It was dirty and messy, and there was never any food in the fridge. One day we had an argument, and he told me that if I didn't like his apartment, then I could get out, so I moved in with my mom instead. But she was living with her new boyfriend in his house. It was okay at first, but soon he started bossing me around like he was my dad. The worst thing was my mom wouldn't back me up. She told me that I should just do what he says. One day at school, I was in the bathroom. It was the end of the day, and I really didn't want to go back to Mom's place. I had been really upset and was putting makeup on to cover it up. That was when I saw a reflection in the mirror behind me and noticed a door I hadn't seen before. I turned around and opened the door. It was an empty cleaning cupboard. It was about the size of a couple of toilet cubicles. I noticed a key hanging inside. The key locked the door. I was curious, so I stepped closer to check it out. But then someone came in and I had to hide fast. So I got inside and hid. A couple of girls came in and no one noticed that I was inside. Then I got an idea. What if I didn't go home that night? I could stay in the cupboard. I texted my mom and said I was spending the night at my dad's. And that night was the first night I spent in the cupboard. I was a bit scared at first, but it was so nice to have somewhere alone without anyone else. I didn't tell anyone, not even my best friend Kimberly, and we usually tell each other everything. The next day at school, I got up early and used the showers at the gym. No one suspected a thing. I went back to my mom's place that night, and her stupid boyfriend started shouting at me straight away. So I told him that he wasn't my real dad and he needed to back off. Well, he got really angry at that, so I packed a bag and I stormed out. I decided I was going to live in the school. I called my mom up and said I was staying with my dad, and Dad thought I was still at Mom's. That night after school, I stole a mattress from the gym, blankets from textiles, and some fairy lights from drama class. I decorated the cupboard and it looked so cool. I hadn't thought about how I'm gonna eat, but I discovered that the school's cafeteria wasn't locked at night, so I snuck in and I ate whatever I wanted for free. Also, I found a key to the vending machines and took loads of chocolate and sodas. The next night, I decided to explore more of the school. I snuck into the staff lounge and looked around. It was pretty boring, really, though they had some nice cookies in there. Then I snuck into the principal's office and found the master key that unlocked all of the staff lockers. I found something shocking. It was a half-open bottle of whiskey in Mr. Taylor, my science teacher's locker, next to some photos of his ex-wife. There is no way he should have that at school. I had a feeling that soon I will start uncovering all of the school's secrets. I only had to make sure no one will find out about mine. One morning, I was hiding in the bathroom sleeping. I woke up really late to the sound of voices in the bathroom. It was two girls from my class, Sophie and Grace. They were talking about a party they had been to the night before. Sophie said that their friend Jen had been showing off the whole night and flirting with all the boys. Jen has really long blonde hair and is one of the most gorgeous girls in this school, but she is so nice. I really doubted she had done anything wrong. I think they were just jealous. Sophie and Grace talked more. Sophie was saying she had done something horrible to get revenge on Jen. But then they started whispering and I missed what they said. Once they left, I got dressed and snuck out of my secret cupboard. Later on, I skipped a couple of classes and decided to go back into the cupboard and see if I could hear more conversations. I didn't hear any gossip, but I heard someone crying. I opened the door a little bit and saw Jen crying. She was brushing her hair and clumps of it were falling out in the sink. I realized what Sophie and Grace had done. They had found a way of making her hair fall out. When they left, I heard more people coming into the bathroom, and I heard more voices. I realized it was boys talking. I froze. Why were there boys in the girls' toilets? Then I realized that the noise wasn't coming from the girls' toilets. It was coming from the other wall. I put my ear against the wall and listened. I could hear Matt talking to his friends. Matt is just the most gorgeous guy I have ever seen, and I had been wanting to ask him out for ages, but I'd been too shy. I could hear him talking about a girl he liked, and how he hoped that she would ask him out. His friends said to him why didn't he ask the girl out first, but he said he wasn't sure if she wanted to go with him or not, so was hoping she would ask him. My heart literally skipped some beats. He must have been talking about me. When they left, it all went quiet, and I realized I was running really late for class. It was science, and Mr. Taylor was not happy with me. He gave me detention for being late. I didn't care, though. It wasn't like I had anywhere else to be. But he could tell that I wasn't bothered, so he started picking on me and mocking me in front of the whole class. I went and I cried in the cupboard. Then I heard Kimberly come in with another girl. They were talking about Matt. Kimberly was saying how she was going to ask him out. I was crushed. I wanted to go out with him, not her. I had to do something to get the upper hand, and I needed to come up with a plan. After school, I had detention, and Mr. Taylor was being so mean to me again. I had no idea why he kept picking on me, but I knew I needed to get my revenge on him. But I had bigger problems to worry about. I had a maths exam the next day, and I had done no revision at all. And I knew if I failed, the teacher, Mrs. Sims, would call my parents. So I spent that evening looking for the answers. I looked in her locker, but there was nothing there. So I went to her classroom and broke into her desk and found them. I took photos on my phone so I could look at them. Then I put them back where I found them and shut the desk. But then I heard something. Footsteps. It was past 11. What was someone doing in the school? The school was pitch black apart from the room I was in, so I turned the light off and I hid under the desk. Then someone came into the room. It was the janitor. He asked who was there, looked around a bit, then left. I waited a couple of minutes, then I left the room. I crept down the hall, then I heard footsteps. He was behind me. He had been waiting to try and catch me. So I started running and I ran to the bathroom and locked myself in the cupboard. I couldn't believe I had almost got caught. I know all of this sounds pretty unbelievable, but my life really had turned this crazy. But this wasn't even the end of the weird stuff that happened to me. The next day, I went to my maths exam feeling pretty confident. I'd stayed up most of the night memorizing the answers. It was multiple choice, and I chose mostly right answers and threw in a few mistakes in there so I didn't get 100%. Then I got back to thinking about Matt, and I had a great idea. That night, I broke into his locker and looked inside. I wanted to find out more about him, and I did. I found out he was really into tennis. So I went online and bought some tickets for a tennis match, planning to ask him to go with me. How could he say no? I then got another idea. I broke into Jen's locker and looked at her stuff. She had loads of hair care products in there. I took the lid off of one of them. It smelled like chemicals. Had her so-called friends been putting something in her shampoo? I stole the bottle and threw it in the bin. But I still had to get revenge on Mr. Taylor. So I wrote an anonymous note saying that Mr. Taylor was drinking before lessons and had whiskey in his locker. That would teach him not to be so mean. I felt such a sense of power. Living in this school was so good. Then it all started to go really wrong. So I asked Matt out and he agreed to go to the tennis game with me. And I was so happy. But then I told Kimberly and she seemed okay. But later on, I was in the cupboard and I heard her crying in a cubicle. She was so upset, and then it got worse. I heard Matt go into the boys' toilets, and he was talking about how he was going to the tennis game with me, even though he didn't fancy me, because he wanted to go to the tennis match. How could I have been so stupid? But I couldn't think about that as I had science class. Mr. Taylor wasn't there. We had a supplement teacher. I should have been happy, but I couldn't stop thinking about how I had upset Kimberly. I was a dreadful friend. Then, halfway through class, Mr. Taylor came storming in, shouting and swearing. He threatened me and said it was my fault his career was ruined. He had recognized my handwriting on the note. Some other teachers came in and dragged him out. I'm not going to lie, it was all a little scary. Then I got called into the principal's office. I felt relieved. Perhaps he was going to say well done for helping him get rid of a bad teacher. But when I sat down, he did not seem happy. He told me that the janitor had reported seeing me at school late one night. The principal had decided not to ask me about it, but to keep an eye on me instead. It turns out that there were CCTV cameras at the school I hadn't seen. He had seen me breaking into Matt's and Sophie's lockers and going into the principal's lounge. He asked me how I had got onto school premises at night, but I just kept quiet. Like I was going to tell him that. Then he put something onto the desk. It was my answer sheet from the maths test a few days ago. He said that Mrs. Sims had reported me for cheating. I was so shocked I had got caught. I had been so careful. He told me that I had got such a bad mark that Mrs. Sims had thought something wasn't right. She had checked my answers, and it turned out I had selected the answers to a different test. I had stolen the wrong exam. As it was a multiple choice exam, I had just assumed it was the correct one, and I was so wrong. Then he told me the worst thing. He had called the police as my breaking and entering counted as a criminal act. And he had called my mom and dad, and they were on their way. So I did the only thing I could think of. I ran. I went to my secret cupboard and locked myself in. I could hear loads of people searching for me, but no one found me. Luckily, I had food and drink, so I hid in the cupboard for a few hours. When it was nighttime, I snuck out. The school was empty, but what was I going to do? There was no way that I was going to end up living with my parents again. So I decided to run away. I packed a bag with my few belongings and I left the school. Then I hitchhiked to a town that was hundreds of miles away, a place where no one would know me. I spent the night on the street, sleeping in a shop doorway like a homeless person. It was cold, dark, and scary. Then I realized I was a homeless person, and I was to blame. I couldn't live like this. So the next day I went to a police station and handed myself in. Luckily, I was let off with a warning. They were more concerned about reuniting me with my mom. That was last summer, and now I'm back living with my mom. She split up with her boyfriend, and now she's living in a really small apartment. My room is tiny. It's no bigger than the cupboard I was sleeping in at school. I miss that cupboard sometimes. At least sneaking out and exploring the school at night gave me some freedom. Now living with my mom, I feel really trapped. Have you ever lived anywhere really weird? Or have you ever eavesdropped and heard some good gossip?
Hi there, I'm Rachel, and boy do I have a story for you. My algebra teacher, Mrs. Fritz, read my text messages out loud to the entire class, and she absolutely ruined my life. The thing is, these texts were not your typical day-to-day messages between a mother and daughter, or girl talk among friends about the cutest guy in school. I'm talking relationship-ending, secretive, and juicy stuff I hoped no one would ever find out about, especially my best friend Anna. It all started one day in the fourth period. I was sitting at my desk when I remembered that I'd forgotten to silence my phone. We're supposed to keep them in our lockers, but naturally no one ever does. I had never been caught before, so I was certain I could check it without being seen. I just wanted to sneak a glance and make sure it wouldn't go off. I discreetly pulled it from my pocket and checked the sidebar. Just as I suspected, the silent mode wasn't activated. I switched it on silent and casually slipped it back in my pocket. Crisis averted, right? Wrong. Mrs. Fritz, who up until this point had always been my favorite teacher, saw me messing with it. She came over to my desk and asked me to give her the phone. I should have run out of the classroom right then and there. Trust me, it wouldn't have been nearly as embarrassing as what followed. But I didn't. I handed her the phone, and then my life was over. See, what you should probably know is I've always had a crush on my best friend's boyfriend, Corey, until I found out he was cheating on her. I thought he was the perfect guy, so handsome and sweet. He treated Anna like a queen, and I had always been so jealous of their relationship. I mean, they were honestly the perfect couple. Everyone envied them. Homecoming king and queen, head cheerleader and quarterback of the football team type of stuff. They were that perfect. Everyone thought they'd be together forever, including me. That all changed, though, when I walked in on him after gym class one day in the girls' locker room and saw him making out with someone else. I ran out of there like crazy, trying to forget what I'd seen, but the image was forever imprinted in my mind. Corey caught up with me and made me promise not to tell Anna. Something I'll always regret, but followed through with anyway. He fed me a bunch of lines about how stressed he'd been lately and how he and Anna just couldn't seem to make enough time for each other. I know it sounds crazy, but I actually sort of believed him. He was so convincing. I kind of felt sorry for him until a few days later when he came on to me. He cornered me at my locker and thanked me for my discretion, then kissed me so fast I barely had time to breathe. I guess he figured that since I had already caught him cheating and promised not to tell my best friend, then maybe I'd be okay with a little something on the side. Of course, I shoved him away and told him to leave me alone, now more determined than ever to tell Anna what a scumbag he was. And yet, I never could muster up the courage. I mean, she would hate me. Best friends aren't supposed to keep secrets from each other, especially secrets like these. I was really hoping she'd find out on her own, catch him in the act sort of thing. Then I wouldn't have to be the bearer of bad news. Anna and I hung out dozens of times after all of this, and I never said a word. My guilt was eating me alive, but I couldn't tell her. Whenever I saw her and Corey together, I literally wanted to puke, but I had to keep the ruse. There was no turning back now. I had come to be pretty good at hiding the truth. Well, that was before Mrs. Fritz snatched my phone and ruined everything. "Let's see what couldn't wait," she announced to the entire class after taking my phone, and then clicked on the last message I received, which was from Corey. My classmates heard everything, and I really do mean everything, including Anna, who was sitting right behind me. I didn't dare turn around. She found out about my feelings, how disgustingly perfect I always thought they were, how much I used to like Corey, what happened in the locker room, and how I promised not to tell. And the kiss. I was mortified. While she was reading the message, Mrs. Fritz herself looked shocked, probably wondering how I could do such a thing. I looked at Anna, and her face was red. She seemed angry, and like she was about to cry. I will never forget the look she gave me in that moment. She must have felt extremely betrayed. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran up to our teacher and tried to grab my phone out of her hand, pleading with her to stop, but she kept on reading. How could a teacher be so cruel? I mean, didn't she understand that every word was just adding to my humiliation? The boys in the class were laughing at me. The girls were whispering in between gasps. She gave me back my phone the moment Anna left her seat and stormed out of the classroom. The damage was already done. My big secret was out. I knew in my heart that there was no way I would ever recover from this. As you can imagine, my little fourth period incident was the talk of the school. It didn't blow over quickly like I hoped it would. It only intensified. Anna refused to speak to me, and Corey was on to the next girl in no time, almost as if Anna had never existed. My other friends couldn't trust me either, and I ate my lunch alone. It was a terrible way to spend the last few months of our senior year. What could I do? But what really mattered to me was Anna. I tried for weeks to get her to hear me out, but she wanted nothing to do with me. My best friend since kindergarten was giving me the silent treatment, and it hurt more than you could possibly know. How could I have betrayed her like that? Why did I make that stupid promise to Corey? I kept telling myself that I was only trying to spare her the pain, but it never made me feel better. No matter how I tried to spin it, I was in the wrong. She must have really believed that I had a thing going on with her boyfriend. After what seemed like years of begging her to listen to me, Anna finally ended her silence and agreed to meet me after school. It took a lot of convincing to get her to meet me, but it was nice to be able to talk to my best friend again. I broke the ice by admitting how sorry I was, and told her everything about the exchange with Corey in the locker room. Amazingly, the mystery girl he kissed was never revealed in the text messages everyone had heard. And I was hoping that by giving Anna her name, I'd get back in her good books. For the moment, it seemed to work. I told her it was Martha, an older student who was notorious for breaking up relationships. Anna absolutely despised Martha, having had plenty of run-ins with the voluptuous beauty before. They can have each other, she told me. And I was so happy to see that my best friend was coming to her senses. She didn't need Corey and would be much better off without him. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Besides, graduation was coming up, and pretty soon he'd just be a bad memory. I could tell things were starting to shift between us, and that my best friend was back. Thank you for watching this video. Oh, and by the way, did you notice how many times this BFF necklace appeared in the video? Tell us the answer in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel.